to do that, it was important that the people who were the key players of corporate governance in any organization should be identified and should also be given certain specific empowerment, definitive roles. So, this was the background in which we were meeting. And of course, when one looked at the more developed economies, you saw that they had gone over to apply or explain. So, as against a situation of the Pakistan Code where there were some mandatory requirements, here we were in a Western environment which said apply or explain. It left itself to the individual company to decide which principle to follow, and if it did not, why it was not following that principle. Having said that, 2008 saw the financial crisis. So, things became very apparent that however developed the Western economies were and however developed the boards of listed companies were, there were certain deficiencies that existed. There were failures of board performance. So, in that backdrop, the team that worked for almost 2 years came up with certain recommendations to the Securities and Exchange Commission. And these recommendations were sent to the Securities Exchange in June of 2010. After that, there was a period in which we embarked on a series of roundtables. After that, there were further amendments, and then the Securities Exchange came out with a draft code that was put on the website, and finally the code, as you see it, came out and has been implemented from 11th of April. So, it is with this backdrop that I wanted to start and give you a background. So, some of the things that you will see will look very, very basic to you, but there is a sense in the way that the task force thought, and the sense really is this, very simple. If you are moving someone from conformance, which is tick the box, to, from compliance, which is tick the box, to conformance, then you have got to eventually be thinking of changing the mindset of people. And the reason why you want to change the mindset of people is that eventually you want them to put their combined thoughts and energies for the long term sustainable value growth of the organization. And effectively, when you talk about corporate governance, you are talking about trying to build long term sustainable value. With these few words, I just want to put you into a situation where this is supposed to work.
ठीक है, sorry, I'll use this.
Okay, a classic organization structure when you talk about a limited company is obviously there has to be somebody who puts money into the company, who are the shareholders, and then there is a requirement of company law which talks about there being a board of directors. The company law says that the board of directors have to manage the business, and so the board of directors they identify, they select, and they appoint the chief executive, who in turn develops a management team. That's like the classic structure. Now, if we take a look at the companies that have been incorporated in Pakistan, there are almost 60,000 companies that are registered with the Securities Exchange. of those 60,000 companies, the companies who are directly impacted by the Code of Corporate Governance are not more than 1,000. The way I say not more than 1,000 is that the code is currently applicable to all the listed companies, 600 listed companies. It's also been made applicable by the Securities Exchange to the non-banking financial institutions. So all your asset management, your mutual fund, mudarabas, investment leasing and insurance. If you total those up, you're talking maybe about for the 200 companies. Additionally, there is State Bank of Pakistan which has made the code applicable through the prudential regulations to all the banks. Now the banks include the authorized banks, the DFIs, and then the further extension is to the microfinance institutions. So if we were to put it all together, there is not more than 1,000 companies that are impacted by the code. Having said that, what happens to the remaining 59,000? Now these 59,000 private limited companies are simple structures that have incorporated themselves under the Companies Act. And wherein does there a difference between a sole proprietorship, a partnership and a limited company? If the person who sets up a business as a sole proprietor or engages into a partnership with someone else, decides to incorporate a limited company, then the person is sending a very clear message that whosoever deals with this organization deals on the basis that the liability of the people who are sponsoring, who set up the company, is limited to the amount of capital that we have contributed. Therefore, why should corporate governance exist? If the person who has set up the company has entire control over the board. So if you have a situation where there is a smudging of share owners, the board of directors and management, they are all the same, then corporate governance ceases to exist. There is no need for corporate governance. It's just like a sole proprietorship where the individual will run the business, put the money in and manage it, and if there are any liabilities, then the individual will be responsible for all of his assets, regardless of how much he puts in the business. Not only he himself, but also his wife and his family, etc. So if it's a partnership, then the partner will make sure that there is an agreement between the two of them which defines the responsibilities, the roles, how they share the money. But if it is a limited company, what do? The people who are subscribing, they become subscribers to the Memorandum of Association. They are also subscribers to the Article of Association. Now the memorandum basically sets out the objectives of the company, and the article defines how the shareholders amongst themselves will interact, what the relationships will be like, and how the relationships will be with the board of directors. So essentially, it defines the relationship between the shareholders, the board of directors, and it also, in some articles, it defines upon the methodologies for election of the chief executive and the powers of the chief executive. So if we talk about a situation where you separate the share owners from the board and also you separate the management from the board, now you've got three distinct separate entities: the share owners, the board of directors and the management. And so what happens when you set up these relationships? Authority will flow from the share owners to the board of directors to the management. That's how the authority will flow. And having given the authority, there is accountability, and accountability